earlier this year, I had to spend some time in a mandatory quarantine. We had gone to the US to introduce our grandson to his grandparents. And as part of returning back to Singapore, we were required to spend 2 weeks in a mandatory quarantine. And it was overall something that I ended up working out fairly well. We ended up getting adjoining rooms. We split our work times, and we really just actually came together as a family. In fact, the way that we created it, we would call it our 14-day government mandated family retreat. And while I had thought it was going to be pretty harrowing throughout the experience, it actually worked out fairly fine. In fact, the moment that brought me the most anxiety, the most dread, was actually on the day that we were leaving. And we got a text that said, "We're clear to go." And it was like, I read the text, and in that moment, my heart started to flutter. My heart started to flutter. My palms felt a bit sweaty. And I looked at Nicole, my wife, and I was just like, I don't know if I'm ready to go. I don't know if I'm ready to go from quarantine for real. And yet at the same time, that's what I had felt. And I'd actually felt a very similar sensation a few months earlier when we came out of the circuit breaker period in Singapore back in the summer of 2020. And for 3 months, we had been really just in our home and staying away from others and staying away from anything else. And then the restrictions were lifted, and we had a chance to go out to dinner, go out, meet with friends, so on and so forth. And I remember this feeling of dread that that came there, and it was not unfamiliar when I felt it earlier this year again. A dread of, I'm going back out into the world. And if I'm being honest about it, there was a level of comfort that had come from having a very simple life, a life where there was I felt like there was no expectations other than just going through the day. I didn't have to be anywhere at any time. Didn't have to meet anyone at any time. And if it was going to happen, it was going to happen virtually, with the click of a button. Um, and the dread. I had a chance to talk to a friend of mine a few weeks later, and in our discussion. We It came up. It came up that while there were things opening up in the U.S., there wasn't actually any excitement on her behalf to move forward. We weren't necessarily sure, like, and we talked about the dread that was there. We spent a good period of time just examining it and giving space and allowing that to be okay for us in that space, in a way that we were able to leave there and just have a different relationship to what was next, and actually gave us a chance to actually position ourselves and really talk about possibility and where we wanted to head going forward. We left that conversation realizing that it was an important and meaningful one. And so we want to make that the basis of an upcoming World Joy conversation. This conversation that's all around what's next, but also acknowledging the the feelings that come with returning back to a quote unquote normal world, whatever that normal happens to be. And we want to give space for it. We want to give space for the dread, the anxiety, the excitement, all of it, and give us a chance to actually process it together in a way to know that we're not really alone. Because that was one of the biggest things that happened when we were talking. We found out that, like, oh, it isn't just me. Like, and to be able to say it in a way that isn't, I don't know how to say it, uh, basic colloquial, like kind of like polite, like, oh yeah, just we're real with one another. And so we're going to create that space for you to be real with yourself and with others inside a World Joy conversation. We do this inside of the World Joy movement, which you can become a part of by going to beworldjoy.com and then RSVPing for this conversation here. We want to give some space to this. We want to recognize you. We want to help us all move forward. All right. So come have this conversation. It's almost like what's next, given and how do we even prepare ourselves for what's next. We will see you in the conversation. And until then, be heard, be seen, be World Joy. I'll talk to you soon.
It's the World Joy Movement. Yeah. What was your greatest insight from this conversation? And if you want to come and be a part of a conversation like this live, it's really simple. Just go to beworldjoy.com and come introduce yourself and let's take the conversation to the next level because you're there now. All right, let's play.